Hey everyone, welcome back to another HOA story. This one's about how my farm animals were banned and then taken from me completely. And get this, I'm not even part of the HOA. I own a small farm in the Philippines. It doesn't make me rich by any means, but it helps support me and my family. The area used to be mostly low income, but recently, some wealthy developers bought up a lot of land nearby to build upscale housing for people with more money. Luckily for me, my parents owned the farm before all that happened, so they had the resources to make sure I got a good education. I learned farming from them and picked up things like English and general knowledge from school. That mix helped me navigate life better than most around here. My farm is right next to this new housing development, but I've never been part of their HOA. They started one pretty quickly after moving in, which can be risky here because HOAs don't always have strong government oversight. At first, I thought that being outside the HOA meant I'd be left alone, but as you'll see, that wasn't the case. On the farm, I raise chickens and goats and grow organic produce. I sell eggs, goat milk, and fresh vegetables, and a lot of the newer residents really liked the idea of buying local and organic. Business was actually going pretty well. I also have a few rescue cats. They don't bring in any money, but they do a great job protecting the chickens and scaring off wild animals. Let's just say they're not exactly the cuddly Disney type. If someone tried to break in, I think Disney and Dexter would probably roll over and purr instead of hiss. At first, when the HOA started up and more people moved in, things seemed fine. A lot of them wanted to buy from me, and no one raised any complaints. Then I found out who was running the HOA. He's the kind of guy I've seen before, the type that craves control and power wherever he can find it. From what I could tell, he didn't like that my property was bigger than most, or maybe he just didn't like the idea of a working farm next door. He told me once, casually, that my place ruined the neighborhood and that I didn't belong there. But at first, he didn't push too hard. We both knew he technically had no authority over me since I wasn't part of the HOA. Then, out of nowhere, I got a violation notice in the mail. Outrageous, right? He was now claiming that my land was part of the HOA and that I was breaking tons of rules about animals. According to him, I had to remove every single animal from my property or face daily fines until I did. Not just the livestock either, he even said 3 cats were too many, and I could only keep one if he personally approved them. Yeah, buddy, if you try to tell me how many pets I can have, I'm going nuclear. I was furious. Honestly, I didn't even have time to fully process it before he showed up at my door, literally 10 minutes after I read the letter. It felt like he was watching me, waiting for me to react. He asked to come inside, but I blocked the doorway and refused. He acted offended, saying I was being rude and making a bad impression. I reminded him again and again that I'm not part of his HOA, that he has no authority over me, and that those fines meant absolutely nothing. That's when he smiled, actually smiled, like he was enjoying this. He turned to 2 of his officers who were standing nearby on the street and motioned them forward, clearly trying to intimidate me. I'm not a small guy, thanks to years of farm work, but these guys were built, definitely bigger than me. He spoke down to me like I wouldn't understand anything complex, like farming was the only thing I could possibly be capable of. He even said something disgusting, that a judge would always side with him over a farmer who smells like goats. He bragged about having money, connections, and influence, while implying I had none of that. Then, pretending to be generous, he gave me until the end of the week to get rid of my animals. But here's the thing, I don't scare easily. Growing up in this area, I dealt with tougher people than him and his rich friends. So I looked him dead in the eyes and laughed. I told him I wasn't part of his HOA and that he couldn't lie or bully me into giving up my animals. I think he was surprised that I stood up to him. He gave me an angry look but walked away without starting a fight. That's when he changed tactics. Instead of coming directly at me, he started hanging around near my property, still on public space, and warning customers that my business was illegal. Most of my regulars ignored him, but new people from the HOA got scared and stopped buying from me. At first, I was still managing financially, but I started getting worried that he might actually succeed in killing my business. And eventually he did. It got worse after that. He started spreading rumors around, claiming my farm was a health hazard, saying my produce and animal products were dangerous and could make people sick. It was pure slander. All I could do was reassure my customers that nothing was wrong, and honestly, no one had ever had any issues except for the HOA president himself, who claimed he got sick. But here's the thing, he never even bought from me in the first place. From there, things really picked up. It was like he was on some kind of timeline, like he needed to get rid of me fast. One morning, I woke up to find my farm completely vandalized. Products and supplies were stolen, fences had been cut, and my chickens were running loose. Luckily, whoever did it wasn't smart enough to open the coop door, so none of them actually escaped. I filed a police report, but without real proof, there wasn't much they could do. Just saying the HOA president had a grudge against me wasn't enough. I also got an unexpected visit from local government officials. They said they'd been getting reports that my animals were feral, sick, and dangerous, along with other serious accusations. They came around, checked everything out, and at the end gave me a letter stating that I was up to code and that none of my animals showed signs of aggression or danger. So, officially, I was cleared to keep doing what I was doing. But as soon as the inspectors left, the HOA president showed up. He was clearly hoping they'd shut me down based on his false reports. When he saw that didn't happen, he got furious. He told me this wasn't over, that he wasn't backing down, and gave me one last chance before things got a lot worse. He even asked me if I had a death wish or if I was just stupid. I remember looking at him and saying, well, I have a death wish, just not for me. Took him a second to catch on, but I think he finally realized I wasn't going anywhere. At this point, I knew I couldn't handle this alone anymore. I reached out to a lawyer. The situation had gone too far. My lawyer sent the HOA president a cease and desist letter, making it clear he needed to stop sending me violations, fines, and stop coming onto my property. Of course, he ignored it, which honestly I expected. But my lawyer reminded me it was still important we sent it. It shows that I was trying to resolve things peacefully, and it makes it clear that the HOA is the one escalating the issue, not me. If this goes to court, that kind of documentation can really help. Still, I'm worried about what he might do next. I try not to let it get to me, especially because I know that's exactly what he wants, to wear me down. And honestly, I've got a bad feeling. These kinds of guys usually don't stop until they get what they want. The vague threats, the way he watches me, it's all part of it. Lately, I've noticed one of his officers hanging around near my farm almost every time I'm outside working. There are cars parked across the street or slowly driving back and forth at night. I know this isn't over. That's why I'm asking for advice. What should I do now? I feel like I'm just sitting here waiting for the next move, and I know there's more coming. I'll definitely be updating this story when I can, maybe even another video once I have more to share. But for now, I'm trying to stay ahead of it. Someone in the comments suggested getting cameras and documenting everything, and honestly, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm keeping notes on every instance of harassment, and my lawyer is working to gather proof of the false reports he's been making. We'll see where it goes from here. Another commenter put it pretty well. Classic case of trying to push out the poor so they can build for the rich. That's probably how he sees me, not as a person, but as an obstacle. But I'm not moving. I've got my lawyer, I've got my records, and I'm not going down without a fight. It started making more sense when someone pointed out something I hadn't even considered, the idea of land deals. People have told me about situations where HOA leaders or developers make under-the-table deals to push people off their property, especially if they can't buy it outright. If that's what this was about, then my farm being in the way of their plans definitely gave him a motive. I began wondering who actually bought all that land in the first place. Maybe there was a connection I hadn't seen yet. Anyway, here's the update to the story. I made a post a while back about the trouble I was having with the HOA president near my farm, and I want to thank everyone who responded with advice and support. it really meant a lot. To answer a question a lot of people asked, yes, HOA presidents can absolutely get out of control here in the Philippines too. Not everywhere, but in some places, they act like mob bosses running things however they want. That's exactly what this guy was trying to do. As you can probably guess from the title, things have gotten much worse since my last update. So I'll just jump right back into what happened next. The weird looks and feeling like I was being watched lasted for a few more weeks, and then he made his next move. By now, it was clear he wanted me gone. And honestly, I agree with the commenters who suggested he was probably trying to push me out so he could get his hands on the land, maybe even for some kind of deal or kickback. I couldn't afford real security cameras, but I did put up a few fake ones in visible spots, hoping it would scare them off from messing with my property again. I think those were the only thing keeping him from doing anything else for a little while. Then suddenly, complaints started pouring in to the police and local authorities, all clearly from him. He was saying things like I was poisoning the goat milk I sold or putting drugs in it, and that I needed to be investigated again. On top of that, the rumors he was spreading didn't help my reputation. My sales dropped even more, and some people actually started agreeing that I should leave. It was his word against mine, and with him getting the police involved, it looked like I was hiding something. One of the reports he filed claimed I was illegally squatting on the property, like he was trying every possible angle to get me off my own land. The only reason he hadn't tried anything physical, I think, is because he thought I had cameras and I was watching him back. But I knew it was only a matter of time before everything came to a head. I kept copies of every complaint and notice he filed and sent them all to my lawyer. We were trying to build a case, but going after someone with money and connections, like the HOA president, isn't easy. At best, he might get a small fine. At worst, nothing happens if he's got the right people in his pocket. In the meantime, I decided to try selling some of my produce further away from the farm, somewhere he wouldn't show up and harass people buying from me. When I got back and went to check on the animals, something felt very wrong. The chicken coop was empty. The barn was empty. Even my cats were gone. There was no damage to the fence, so I knew they hadn't escaped. Plus, my cats never left the property anyway. They could have jumped the fence anytime, but they stayed because they knew where their food and water were. That's when I realized someone had taken them. After looking around for a bit, I noticed a letter stapled to the barn door. It said I'd violated city laws by keeping animals without proper paperwork and that they were considered dangerous. It also claimed I had too many animals based on the square footage of my land. I panicked not only because my animals were gone, but because I had no idea where they were. At the time, I believed the letter was legitimate. The paper had an official-looking city header and seal, nothing like the usual HOA violation notices I'd been getting from him. Later on, I found out the truth. The animal control officer who left the letter wasn't real. He was just someone the HOA hired to take my animals legally or was going on, and if they weren't charged, it was only because they were lucky, not innocent. In my own lawsuit, I was able to clearly prove ongoing harassment, starting from the cease and desist letter, all the false reports, and the undeniable proof that he caused me to lose both animals and income due to his smear campaigns. In the end, he was forced to pay a large financial settlement to compensate for my losses. Was I happy about the money? Of course, it helped rebuild what he'd tried to destroy. But honestly, it wasn't even the most important part. What mattered most was seeing the look on his face when he realized he'd lost. I gave him the exact same smug expression he used to throw at me every time he thought he had me cornered. And now, with that money, I was able to expand my farm and rescue even more animals who needed a home. He really thought he could win just because he had money and assumed people like me, farmers, were easy targets. He thought we were dumb, easy to scare, easy to push around. But I proved that being poor doesn't mean being powerless. And I'd take being broke and doing the right thing over being rich and corrupt any day of the week. As for how long he'll be in jail, I'm not sure. But I do know that prison here is tough, and the stain on his reputation will follow him wherever he goes for the rest of his life. To end things on a lighter note, here's a funny story from the subreddit r/petty revenge. So, the title says, "Made Mike pay literally." I'm a 36-year-old guy, and I still hang out regularly with a group of friends I met at my old job. We've all moved on to different careers, but we still try to meet up every few months, nothing fancy, usually just grabbing a bite and catching up. The problem started last year when one of my friends became close with his new coworker, let's call him Mike. Mike slowly joined our group and came out to eat with us twice. On paper, he's a great guy. But there's one issue: he has expensive tastes and always tries to split the bill evenly, even when he orders way more than everyone else. The first time it happened, it wasn't a big deal. But the second time, he ordered over $20 more than anyone else. I should have said something then, but I'm a bit of a people pleaser, something I'm working on. Anyway, I recently got a raise at work and wanted to celebrate, so I suggested we go to a steakhouse for lunch. That way, people could order off the lunch menu without breaking the bank. Seemed like a solid idea, right? Well, as soon as I mentioned it, Mike loved the idea. Shocking, I know. I'd seen a bunch of posts online about this kind of situation, and a common tip was to tell the server ahead of time that you want to split the bill separately. So, that's exactly what I did. We got there, everyone ordered normal lunch dishes, nothing too wild except Mike, of course. He went straight for the steak and lobster. Since I was sitting at the opposite end of the table, I got to order last. Before I did, I asked everyone if they were okay ordering separately. I wanted to splurge a little since I was celebrating and didn't want to make them pay for it. Everyone agreed, except, surprise, surprise, Mike. Throughout the meal, he barely spoke to me. I think he was upset he had to actually pay for what he ate. Honestly, my prime rib tasted that much better knowing he couldn't freeload his way through another meal. Sometimes a little petty revenge is just what the doctor ordered.